Hello. We feel flattered by the growing number of our TCG Summit community. You're watching us today from 35 countries. This is really amazing. A very warm welcome to everybody of you here from our headquarters in Zurich. And for the ones who haven't joined the former sessions, my name is Chris Bücker, and I'm the chairman of the TCG Summit and the CEO of Retail Plus, the company that stands behind the summit. COVID-19 and related lockdowns led to dramatic increases of online purchases, as we all know. Click and brick retailers who have taken years to gradually increase the e-commerce business all of a sudden doubled their online share only in a couple of weeks. This has been really amazing and a great performance. Nobody would have ever thought this would have been possible in such a short time. And of course, this record high volume online share is going to go down again. However, it will certainly stay at a higher level than before the pandemic. But there's one issue. The higher online share, as good as it is, has a negative impact on the margin. And this issue, the negative impact on the margin, is going to be, and what to do about it, is going to be the topic of today. And for this, we formed again a very strong panel today for you, featuring top executives from Fnac Darty, ElectronicPartner, Electrolux, and SES-imagotag, the world leader in electronic shelf labeling. Now, I hope Electrolux is going to be able to join because we had some connection problems with Anna, but I hope she will be able to join soon. The intro presentation today is going to be done by Oliver Wyman. And please, you are encouraged to submit questions. The more questions, the higher the interactivity. Any technical problems which might occur during the session, please bear with us and we will try to fix it as soon as possible. And please bear in mind, at the end of the session, there's going to be an exit poll. Please invest 1 minute of your valuable time in order to provide us valuable feedback for the next session so that we can improve the session even further. Having said all this, let's get ready. I hand over to Declan Curry, our conference host of today, and I wish you now an insightful session. Thank you. Declan?
Chris, thank you very much, and hello everybody. Welcome to this third TCG Summit Leaders Talk. I'm Declan Curry. I've been a business journalist for the last 30 years or so, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this discussion today. Our theme today is online share up, net margin down. What next? We're going to have the latest insight from a global business consultancy. We'll have experience and perspective from 4 leaders from your industry, and we welcome your questions throughout the discussion as well. If you look on your Zoom screen, you will see a function entitled Q&A. Use that to ask your questions at any time of your convenience. Not the chat function, mind you, the one that is marked Q&A. And just a reminder that this discussion will be recorded so that people can view it again at a later stage. We thank our strategic partners for their continuing support and contribution. They are the Boston Consulting Group, Canon, Electrolux, GfK, Group SEB, Harman, Intel, and SES-imagotag. Today's short discussion is a sample of what you will enjoy at the next TCG Summit. That will take place on August 25 to 27 this year in Budapest at the New York Palace Hotel. The summit will give you an unbeatable opportunity to network, and it will consider how business has changed under coronavirus. Our new amended theme will be TCG Retail 2020, the new reality. In our adjusted conference program, we will have an in-depth review of the COVID-19 outbreak and its consequences for our sector. We will have examples of best practice from other retail sectors and discuss what we can learn from them. We will have an illustration of strategy options. BCG will show us some strategies for the way forward. Amazon will show how the pandemic will change the supply chain around the world for this sector and what it means for you. Alibaba will share their future plans for Europe. We will discuss analysis on retail and consumers in China after the pandemic, and Facebook will share its thinking on retail trends, how voice and social media will disrupt TCG retail. Each of these presentations will be followed by an in-depth panel discussion on stage with top executives from TCG retailers and brands. There is more information on the TCG website. But we are today offering something to you as TCG Summit Leaders Talks participants. If you register as a new delegate for the summit in Budapest until Tuesday, then we will reward you with your loyalty with €200 off. The link for registration will be in the email that you will receive from us tomorrow. So that offer open until this coming Tuesday. We're going to start this session with your perspectives. We have 2 questions, and we ask you to answer the one that is most relevant to you. The first question is for retailers only. If you are a retailer in the TCG sector, how severe do you expect the economic impact due to the COVID-19 outbreak to be in the full year 2020. There are several options that have now appeared on your screen. Please pick the option that is closest to your experience. If you are a retailer in the TCG sector, how severe do you expect the economic impact due to the COVID-19 outbreak? The options are no impact at all, a moderate impact on revenue, only revenue, not gross profit, and by moderate we mean 5% or less. A strong impact on revenue only of between 5 to 10%. A significant impact on revenue only greater than 10%. A moderate impact on both revenue and gross profit of 5% or less. A strong impact on both revenue and profit of between 5 and 10%, and a significant impact on both revenue and gross profit. You have now submitted your answers. Thank you very much for that. And the majority of you expect 25% of you, of the retailers watching, expect a decline in revenue and growth of between 5 and 10%. A similar amount, 25%, expect a decline in revenue and gross profits greater than 10%. So a pessimistic range of forecasts from the retailers who are watching today. Only 6% think zero impact. Question 2, it's the same question, but this time it is for the suppliers who are watching this. So if you are a supplier in the TCG sector, once again, how severe do you expect the economic impact due to the COVID-19 outbreak for the full year 2020? And the options are the same as they were before. No impact, revenue only declining by 1 to 5%, revenue only declining by 5 to 10%, revenue only declining by greater than 10%, or a decline in revenue and gross profit of between 1 and 5%, a decline in revenue and gross profit of between 5 and 10%, and a decline in revenue and gross profit of greater than 10%. Those are your options. Please select the one that is most relevant to your expectations for this year, the vote for suppliers only, and you have told us that the substantial number of you expect a decline in revenue and gross profit of greater than 10%. 43% of the suppliers watching voting for that particular option, 13% voting for a decline in revenue and profit of between 5 and 10%. 13% of you don't expect no impact at all. So thank you for that perspective. It will inform our discussion among our business leaders during the course of the next hour. We also now get some insight and some food for thought on the coronavirus crisis from Martin Schulte. He's the partner at the global consulting firm Oliver Wyman, and he's the sector leader for consumer durables globally. Martin, the floor is yours. Welcome to our discussion.
Thanks very much, Declan. I'm trying to share the few pages here. Anton and Chris, I still see that option here is disabled. You might want to help me with that. Now it works. Okay, so let's dive right into it. And thanks for the intro, Declan. So let me just put a very quick spotlight on what we see happening in the TCG sector globally. I guess the starting point shouldn't be much news to anybody. We see tectonic shifts in the market, in particular when it comes to the online share, as Chris has said in the introduction. In Europe, for example, from just shy of 20% to over 30%. And if you zoom into China as one of the precursors of what's coming our way, for the first time ever, of course, that's informed by the COVID lockdown, in home appliances, the online share has gone up to more than 50%. And we see a lot of stronger and weaker signals that this is going to stay on a very high level. Now, it gets even more interesting if you blend this with the consumer spending behavior, which you see here on the right-hand side. And what's really interesting for us is that in particular in the premium and luxury space, you see a tremendous amount of trading down. And the amount of trading down you see here between March and April and May is so significant that it can't just be explained by a consumer sentiment or recession. There's a structural effect in here. And the simple truth from our point of view is it's just more difficult to sell higher priced items online. There's a structural effect that premium products are more difficult to sell online as opposed to offline. I think it gets clearer if we just zoom into the manufacturer's perspective here. This is one example of the MDA category. It's a specific category, and that's from a supplier point of view. You see two price volume curves, the light blue prior to COVID-19, the dark blue after COVID-19. And this is obviously sanitized, but what you can clearly see is this shift to lower price points, a systematic shift to lower price points, and also very much away from the premium price points. Again, the issue here is that the industry is now facing a double whammy. It's not just a lower revenues, meaning lower gross profit, but you also have an adverse mix and product structure effect here for many branded players, which is difficult to digest because it adds to the economic situation, which is already difficult. Now, what concerns me personally looking at the sector from a global scale is that I see something like another prisoner's dilemma coming up here, which the panelists might want to pick up. We talked about the issues of the industry already on the previous page. The issues of the trade are very similar. There is first of all a decline in just the water level of revenue and gross profit, but also here spending money online, products being sold online is just systematically less profitable given the high price sensitivity and the high price competitiveness in the market. What concerns me is that I see both sides making the same mistakes. Many activities we see are incremental. They are bottom up. It's kind of feeling the way forward instead of saying we acknowledge, for the case of Europe, that we'll see a market which is fundamentally more online, where we have a very different way of doing business, where we need to think about a different way of consumer engagement, a different way of setting up our commercial model, thereby, starting to think about the new strategic blueprint. This is happening too little. What concerns me as well is that I see that prisoner's dilemma increasing the divides between the retailers and the manufacturers. Of course, manufacturers are cutting costs in marketing and in sales in a number of areas. Manufacturers are thinking intensely about D2C. They are starting to rethink about accelerating D2C, direct to consumer, simply because on the one hand, it's depending on the country, it's 8 to 10% more profitable. And on the other hand, they have seen this dependency on the trade in a number of places. The trade in turn has stopped paying the bills. The trade has started in quite more hard-nosed discussions with their suppliers. So I don't see the industry currently converging towards a joint solution. I see the divide becoming bigger and bigger. What I would like to see happening, and that's a bit of an impulse for the group here and for the panelists later on, is a number of things which can easily be tackled by the manufacturers and the retailers. One is a real premiumization project and a premiumization program. Given what I've said before, given the channel shift, the industry needs to find ways to allow end consumers to buy higher ticket items, whether it's live selling, whether it's live streaming. There need to be new and more digital ways of selling. The second is a reform of the trade spend scheme. Over many years, we've seen the trade spend scheme moving towards conditional back margin, very FMCG-like, but nowadays, many retailers will already operate on a negative front margin to start with. They don't really know how much money they'll have in their pockets at the end of the season. And adding to this, I mean, you all know the situation about the credit insurers, the Euler Hermes of this world. They basically calculate the value and the costs to the retailer based obviously on the book value and not on the actual value. So for bootstrapped retailers, this is a real issue. We feel we need to rebalance this to more of a conditional front margin. Also looking into Europe, future collaboration models, we don't yet see enough joint optimization to the extent to where should suppliers allocate their merchandisers, where should they allocate point of sale support, where should they allocate new activities around live selling and live streaming. So there's a real potential, in particular looking at the Jingdongs of this world coming our way, just having raised 4 billion at the stock market, the AliExpresses of this world already expanding into Western Europe with some interesting flagship stores for the Xiaomi's of this world. So we really see there's a potential to jointly optimize the business to the extent, of course, this is possible. Last but not least, what I would like to see going forward is a joint European operating model. We still see too many silos. The retailers have now engaged in systematic net simulation of sell-in prices. They like to confront suppliers with the country where they find the product at the cheapest sell-in price. The suppliers, in turn, still operate very much on country silos. They don't really engage in a truly European model. They camouflage this with too many product variants. And at the end of the day, our perspective, my personal perspective is the end consumer is currently the one who's benefiting from all that. It's not the retailer, it's not the supplier. And I really see that COVID-19 should have shaken up the industry enough to find new ways of working. With that, back to you, Declan.
Martin, thank you very much. We say thank you to Martin Schulte. We say goodbye to him at this point as well. His presentation is going to be available in the email that we will send to you tomorrow if you want to reprise some of the key and insightful points that he has shared with us today. So now we say goodbye to Martin. We say hello to our panelists. Join me in welcoming to our discussion, please, Anne-Laure Feldkircher, who is Director of Group Strategy and for Mergers and Acquisitions at Fnac Darty, Thierry Gadou, who is President and Chief Executive of SES-imagotag, Karl Trautmann, who is member of the Management Board at ElectronicPartner, and joining us by telephone is Anna Ohlsson-Leijon, who is Chief Executive for the Business Area of Europe and an Executive Vice President at Electrolux. We thank all four of you for your time today and for taking the trouble to be part of this discussion. We also, once again, welcome your questions. As a viewer of this conversation, you are welcome to join in at any time you like by posing your questions using the Q&A function on your Zoom screen. So let's start with our observations on consumer behavior and see what each of our four have noticed in their business in terms of online share and in terms of margin. Anne-Laure Feldkircher from Fnac Darty, why don't you start us off? How is your business looking at the moment?
Thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. It has been quite a strange period because in one week we closed all of our stores in all our geographies and we started to be an online pure player with 100% of our turnover online. Before it was about 20%. In this period, we still managed to keep 50% of our revenues as our e-commerce sales tripled, so we gained like 10 years, especially on technical products, IT, gaming, and MDA mostly. What we saw since the recovery, since we reopened our stores, was a revenue growth around 10%, driven by very high conversion rates. So people that came back to the stores are really here to buy. And at the same time, online sales really continued their strong growth with an increase of around 100%, still on the same categories. On the margin, of course, we had the double effect of services, triple effect actually on services that structurally are less attached in the internet channel that in the stores, of product mix, and of logistic costs that are increasing due to the web. I guess this was some figures. Maybe I can come back later on what we saw on the customer side of how it changed, or do you want me to comment that now?
No, we can develop that point later. Thank you for sharing that information with us. I'm just interested you'll have seen the result of our poll of our viewers at the start of this discussion. It's not a scientific poll by any means, of course, but it is an interesting snapshot. Do you think they're being too gloomy?
No.
Most of them expecting a decline of 5% or greater?
Actually, if I may, I think the question is not exactly the right one, because on what we see is that on the top line, it's the picture is very different from what we see on the gross profit and the net margin and the EBIT in the end of the day. So in terms of revenue, what we really see now is that revenues are not only going up, so plus 10% right after the reopening of the stores, but we believe it's going to be kind of fine. The traffic is lower in the stores, but the average basket and the transformation rate are much higher. But the real issue, and we're going to discuss that, it's what's below the turnover. And there, yes, for sure, I'm more in the bottom line of your poll. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We can discuss that in a little while. Karl Trautmann, what's the position looking like where you are in terms of margin, in terms of online share?
Okay, if we take only the German market, on the 13th of March, we have to close 3,000 doors on one day. So it was not a week time, it was just one day when the government decided that we have to close all our shops, with one differentiation, and that makes that was a good luck for us, because we were still allowed to deliver our services. So we were not allowed to open the stores, but we could offer full service to the end consumer under some hygienic restrictions, of course. And so we have a quite different picture. The mom and pop shops, so the small family-owned stores that we are operating, or that our partners are operating, we're able to keep the turnover very close to the average, or to what we do in normal times. So at least the mom and pop stores in the first 4 months of this year has a minus in turnover of 1%. So they did a very good, brilliant job. The reason for that is that they do not rely on push activities to get their customers into their stores. Customers are coming to the stores of these small dealers because they need service and they need advice or recommendation. And second reason from our point of view for this development is that there has been a mind shift, or a consumer's mind shift taking place. Many cities, government organizations, poll organizations were going on to campaign for support your local dealer. And we were wondering how many customers switched from, let's say it a little bit hard, from Amazon to the local dealer. So the dealers told us that they have met customers that have bought 10 years ago or that have entered 10 years ago for the last time their stores. And now they were phoning, WhatsApping, or going on through the online activities, asking for service, for support, and for the deliverance of goods. So that
the key question, Karl, must be whether those customers who have returned are back for good, or whether it's just a fleeting visit.
We do not know that today, But what we can see after the crisis, or during the reopening, restart scenery that we are handling now, is that we have the same experience like Anne. So we have an increase of the average basket. We have a lot of consumers who are willing to spend even more money for our products, with just a very fair and very simple explanation. So cancellation of vacation in Italy or in Spain makes budget free, and so they're going to invest it into a bigger screen or even in some other things. So the second thing that we have noticed, that is only for the mom and pop shops. For the big surfaced outlets, we of course have a deep decrease of turnover. So we were able to manage it close to 50%. What means we have lost 50%. And of course, we have increased the online sales heavily. What we did is we fetched all, let's say, home office equipment, notebooks, webcams, all these things. We fetched them out of any single store, put them into one warehouse to be able to deliver or to fulfill the needs that we were confronted online with, because that was a question of speed and efficiency. And last but not least, I was listening carefully to what Martin said. Of course, we increased the prices for these products during the online sales period. We did that because there was no competition offline. There was only online, and the online competitors in Germany, they moved all in the same direction. So we were able to increase the average price for the products that we fetched before out of our single stores into one big warehouse. So after the during the reopening period, of course, even in the big surfaced outlets, we have the same experience: less customers, less traffic, but a high conversion rate. So people are coming to entering the stores just to buy something. They are not going to just look around, have some questions. If you have to wear a mask, I think it is not so. It's not a big fun to go shopping. So they are precise what they want. You can try to switch them from one brand to the other, or even to sell them a little bit more premium. But they are ready to buy, and so it is in the hands of the sales staff.
Yes, it just might be a slightly more functional experience than it was once before. Anne Ohlsson-Leijon from Electrolux, you're joining us by telephone. Thank you for being with this discussion. What's your experience of the moment in terms of online share and the change in customer behavior?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we see the same thing here as was just described, and of course, for us, following the same trend in retail, and I mean, for our business, of course, also service technicians, that part of the business has been able to continue, and I think now, of course, when it comes to this question around the mixing down and the facts we saw here lately from the market, I guess it's a question on what is a temporary effect in the situation with the pandemic, where, of course, consumers are in general, concerned about their health and well-being.
What is your instinct here? Well, are consumers trading down? Are they curbing their expenditure per item? I know you don't want to get into a detailed discussion on margin, but I'm interested in what your experience and your instinct is on how customers are thinking.
And of course, it's difficult to say, right? I mean, we know from history that, in a recession type crisis or a financial crisis, or consumer confidence goes down and consumers, of course, mix down. That's a fact. I think, the period we've just been through here, of course, has been slightly different from a regular recession or financial crisis in that sense, right? So I think it is a little bit too early to say how the consumers will behave longer term, and personally, I think part of the potentially temporary mixing down could be an effect of other concerns and maybe more distressed purchases in this situation where your mind is elsewhere as a consumer. Of course, if this turns into a longer term recession and severe impact on the economy long term, I guess we will see the same trends as we've seen in the past recession. So.
Okay, thank you. Stay with us. We will bring you back into the discussion, even though we can't see you. We still welcome your insight, and we're glad that you're there with us on the line as well. Thierry Gadou from SES-imagotag, what do you see?
Well, I think, like everyone on this call, I mean, we see the numbers, and the ones presented by Oliver Wyman speak for themselves, really. But I think beyond these numbers, we feel that the real impact of this lockdown period is a sudden major gap between the level of digitization of consumers and retailers. As a senior exec of Walmart was putting it, he said, in 3 months our shoppers have made a 5-year leap forward in digital adoption, and all of a sudden our transformation plans have, are 5 years behind our customers' expectations, and we need to accelerate. And so, I think that is. Of course, we should, obviously, we see big differences across, verticals, sectors, whether, talk about food, or here it was an interesting example in grocery, and of course, fashion, TCG, and pharmacy, DIY are quite different. But there are also we see big differences, I mean, across geographies. Frankly, in Europe, what happened in Germany is totally, from what we see, is totally different from what happened in South Europe and France and Nordics, and it's very, there are quite differences. But what so I think that this period, this crisis, has been widening this gap. It also beyond the paralysis period is going to trigger, a race or an acceleration of store digitization. Because one of the other outcomes of this crisis is, I think, has been to highlight, paradoxically, everybody talks about the rise in, the surge in e-commerce sales, but it also, I think, highlighted the critical, value of physical stores. Either because they were, supplying such, essential goods, all of a sudden they were at the center of the, everybody's attention, or because people were missing the stores that had been forced to close. And I think this, this criticality of physical, stores is something that for me will be one of the outcome. Again, I'm coming back, paradoxically, I'm coming back to grocery, to this Walmart example, because it's very interesting to see how incredible the synergy between online and offline has been demonstrated in this period by Walmart. And it's very interesting because over the past, the first 4 or 5 months, they have had an increase in e-commerce, of course, like everybody, but they have had an enormous increase in curbside pickup. In other words, online orders were prepared in stores and made available for picking in stores. And this has been driving in-store sales massively. So if you look at the performance for the first time, and I think really it's a historical performance, they have, got right the magic quadrant. Online and offline sales going together, and online and top line and bottom line has also been going up. And I think this is a learning that is going to be true for TCG. And just as a conclusion, I think that for TCG, there is, I mean, what we're doing now, obviously the many projects are either slowed down or at least partly postponed because of this period, but we are very intensively working with some of some of your members actually on interesting things and you know, about one thing that highlighted IKEA recently. You know that IKEA has been, you know, bouncing back incredibly, so incredibly that they are now discussing with governments how to, you know, how to reimburse all the subsidies and you know, to the governments that help them, because they say we are back to normal and even better than normal. And so, and I think this is coming to this is coming to a very interesting thing for TCG. If we step a little back and consider what happened to us for 3 months, is that we have been extremely home-centric. We have, you know, it's a one in lifetime experience to be, you know, permanently at home for 2 months or so, sometimes even more. We have brought our office at home. We have used our homes like never before, and you know, and in particular all the digital devices, equipments. We have experienced how delightful or frustrating can be a home, depending on how much you have invested in your equipment and all these things. And I think that, so beyond this example of IKEA, I think that what we are you know, what we see is that all these equipments, you know, wire and wireless networks, home automation, mobility tools, desktop tools, electrical appliances, all these things are, you know, are of an extraordinary complexity for people. And
okay, Thierry, sorry to cut in. I want to bring Anne-Laure into the discussion once again to look at some tactics that businesses might adopt to counter some of these trends. Because Anne-Laure, you in your opening remarks, you talked about the changes in margin, the changes in online share as just being one part of the story. Of course, the really important element is how you react to it.
Sure. If you allow me, I would comment in 1 minute very quickly on the question you asked on customer trends, because we run some studies and I just wanted to share that with you. So we see 4 trends. The first one we discussed it already is the shift online. Second one is about experience in the store. So we have very extreme behaviors, those that want to wander around, look for everything, and those that are very scared and just, you know, don't want to wander anymore. And then we have 2 very interesting elements about polarization, strong polarization in terms of value. So you said we discussed premiumization, lower value on the web. What we see, at least in France, is that we have around 30% of the customers that say they want to reduce strongly their spendings, 30% who says they want to go for premium, they want to spend their money, and around 30% that remains unchanged. So that's quite interesting for us. And then another trend that I would like to share with you is again about polarization, interesting for our industry, about environmental, social responsibility, about durability of what we sell. And here again, we see kind of the same figures as I just commented right 30 seconds ago. Is about 30% people that want to consume differently, less secondhand products, more durable. 30% that really don't care, and 30% that say, let's see. So again,
well, Anne-Laure, at a practical level, then, what does that do in your stores? What does it do to the mix of products that you offer? What does it do to some of the tactics that you might deploy to counter any trading down, such as offering premiumization? How does it work out in the real world?
Yeah. So yes, no, you're right. It's what does it mean for us? So it means a lot of things in terms of pricing, in terms of promotion, in terms of assortment, in terms of the way the merchandising, and yeah, basically everything. So it's lots of things, exactly. And I also want to just, you know, take a few minutes to say that the web, because it's our topic today, has impact on the profitability because of course, turnover of many things. Actually, services is the first one, but also everything that goes in the web P&L, right? So we have transportation costs that are around 50% of our web P&L versus 10% in the stores. And we have SEA costs, acquisition costs, that is huge on the web. It's around 10% of our all web cost versus 3% for the stores again. So looking at this web, the growing of the web impact is a lot of topics that we need to have in mind. And it's not only on profitability, it's also on cash, because it will require us to invest more in digital capabilities. And it requires us also to invest more in our stores, because it increases customer expectations in terms of experience. So it's really about CapEx and about profitability.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, that's very interesting. I want to bring Karl in with his thoughts on that. And also, Karl, going back to a point you made earlier about the changing nature of the customer experience, if it is becoming much more functional, or if it will be much more functional in the future, does that make it more difficult when you're also saying to customers, spend more money, buy the premium product, take the services that we can offer you as well, look at all this extra value that we can give you? Is it harder to do that when stores have to have a much greater emphasis on public health?
It has always been a challenge to bring the customer from a medium or from an entry-level model up to a mid-size or even to a premium model. So that has not changed because of COVID. Second, human beings are not made for quick changes. If they get not in front of a gun, they will not change their behavior quick. So let's have a look on what is the development of the online part of the business after the reopening. In our company, we can see clearly that we have a strong decline of online turnover, and we have a big raise of traditional offline turnover. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we have for years now focused on a selected premium assortment in our stores. And we will keep this strategy even after COVID-19, because before COVID, it was, from our point of view, the only way to survive the competitive battle in the market. So that is something we will not change. Maybe it is that what Thierry mentioned before, that we have to speed up a little bit with the digitalization in the way how we do the sales process in the stores. That is something we have to speed up for sure. That is what is our learning out of this 3.5 months. But think 3.5 months, it is 10 weeks. Oh no, sorry, 12, let's say 15 or 20 weeks, doesn't matter. We are not going to change our strategy after a period of 3.5 or even 4 or 5 months in total. Because that was let's say an accident. It was just a bump in of something from outside that we were not prepared for. But our long-term strategy is clear and simple: best service, selected premium assortment, good salespeople on the floor, and we are totally convinced that that is the these are the success factors even for the future. COVID-19, yes or no, doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. And Ohlsson-Leijon, let me bring you back into the discussion. How important is marketing? How important is creating the perception of a clear and enhanced value to customers? And what's the role of retailers and suppliers in doing that?
I mean, I think that, I mean, this is a crucial point, I think, from various aspects, but in order to deliver that value to consumers, of course, you know, you need to have the underlying innovation. So that is definitely an area we need to continue to invest in and link that with clear claims on the benefits of this innovation to consumers, and be able to provide those assets to our partners to get the message across through whatever channel it is, and especially also maybe with the challenges to do that online with of course also digital assets, but I think it is about that complete experience, and of course the brand is a filter that consumers are using in a purchase situation. So it is very important to make sure that there are clear investments behind the brands, but also behind consumer-facing, assets that really provide the clarity around the innovation and the benefits they provide to consumers. So I would say post-COVID, even more important, clearly.
But when you talk about investment in marketing, do you mean investment in your marketing direct to consumers, or do you mean investing in partnership marketing schemes involving you and the retailers through whom you speak to consumers?
Yeah, I think it's about, through our customer partners and retailers, finding the right digital assets to convey the message through the channels that our retail partners utilize, definitely, and have a very strong and coherent message, and do that in a powerful way.
Sorry to cut in. Anne-Laure, just on this particular point, when Martin Schulte did his presentation earlier in our conversation, he talked about the need for suppliers to trust retailers with the marketing and to put more of the money up front. Is that something you think is necessary?
Yeah, we've been working for a few years now on really changing our relationship to our suppliers and be a lot more in partnership, in the partnership mode, and that's we experienced also during the crisis. So yes, it's definitely a partnership mode that we should look at. It's the only way.
We've been asking people who are watching for their questions using the Q&A function as part of Zoom, and we have been getting some questions on this particular point and on the wider issue of the relationship between retailers and suppliers. Let me read this question. There is resentment by suppliers that retailers have abandoned them during the COVID period. There is no major push online. Orders are being cancelled, no response to any queries. Are retailers conscious that their reaction has pushed suppliers to develop their own online and retail strategy? That's a question come from, I imagine, from a supplier who is watching this. Anne-Laure, what would your response to that be?
Well, I will respond that we've been, again, extremely, we've invested a lot to build some partnership with with all our suppliers. And I don't believe that, we wanted or we were aiming at, putting all this work behind us during the crisis. It's necessary to our business model. It's what makes us strong. It's the key is the relationship with our suppliers. So I really don't, I don't bound or whatever the word is with these comments, and I don't think it's the way we acted, and I hope not.
Karl Trautmann, has there been a breakdown, even temporarily, in the relationship between retailers and suppliers? Has it been put under more stress and strain by the sheer scale of the COVID crisis?
Let me take a picture. It is not enough to own the oil spring. You always have to have the hand on the pipeline, because otherwise you will not get the oil from the spring to the pump station. So of course, many of my, not talking about my colleagues or competitors, only about us. Of course, the first activity that we were starting during the crisis was cash management, because saving cash is the most important thing if you are confronted with such an extreme situation. And it might be that we were not able to phone every single supplier at the same time to explain to him what we are going to do next. And of course, we had a lot of negotiation with the suppliers for an extension of payment periods, for example. And if you want to have a fair picture of your relationship to any single supplier you're working together with, you can see that on the reaction on these topics. We have had suppliers who said, okay, listen, we have a clear understanding of your problems. We will get 30 days extra. And we had suppliers, on the other hand, who were telling us that we have a contract that we have signed, that we have committed to pay at the 15th of, let's say, April, and we have to do because it's due day. So then we paid. Let me put the answer of your question into this picture. We have two bowls, and we have one bowl where we put in the suppliers who were not flexible, not willing to support us in any way, and we have the other bowl where we put the suppliers in who were willing to support us. And the good news is that the number of suppliers in the bowl that will support us is much bigger than the number of suppliers in the bowl that was not willing or is not willing to support us. We all together are sitting in one boat, rowing in the same direction, hopefully. We have a big issue. That issue is called Ohlsson-Leijon and insurance companies. And this is an issue for retail as well as for the industry, and that is something we have to solve together in the other or in one or the other way. That is what Martin mentioned before in his first.
And I imagine there's not much point in me asking you to name the suppliers in the bad bowl. That's probably not something.
I can tell you, Declan, I have forgotten the names immediately after we put them in the bowl.
They are gone. They are forgotten.
They are gone.
Anne-Laure, just picking up and developing that, there is another question from our audience. How should suppliers help retailers in this post-COVID world? Anna's listening. Thierry is with the discussion as well. What's your advice to them? How should suppliers focus their effort?
No, I think it's exactly what Karl was saying. If we want to be strong, it's together, and we are in the same business, doing the same business. We are existing through the suppliers. The suppliers are selling the products to us. So it's really about, being partners. Of course, and yes, you're right. Everybody wanted to save cash, so it may have tense certain relationships. So it's about getting more exclusivity. It's about supporting each other. I have no concrete example in mind. It's really about having more partnership relationships.
Yes, it's getting.
This is a different topic than the one we were looking at about the web and the impact on the margin. But yes. Yeah.
The starting point has to be one of collaboration and mutual respect, and then you work from there, I suppose. Ohlsson-Leijon, you've been listening to that particular discussion. I don't know how much of Martin Schulte's presentation you heard at the very beginning, but one point he made that stood out is that under this pressure, he sees the differences in agenda between suppliers and retailers becoming magnified, so there will be less collaboration rather than more. Do you agree with that?
I heard that, and I don't. I mean, I definitely agree with what's been said here. It is about a partnership to serve the needs of the consumer at the end of the day, and we can only do that in close collaboration, building on each other's strengths and working more strategically and operationally in strong partnership, and that's also what I've experienced during this crisis, and I think that's absolutely the only way forward to operate in a good way, and also through, of course, the changes in trends and consumer behaviors we see. So I think that amplifies the need for doing that and strengthen the relationship as I see it.
Thank you. We have a question from Nevin Francis. How do you see the role of promotions in Q3, Q4 2020, and is stock availability a key concern? Anne-Laure, let me bounce that question over to you. The role of promotions in tempting customers to spend once again, is it important?
So at the restart, when we reopened all of our stores, it was really about how do we get our consumer back? So how do we activate them? And of course, promotion is one of the levers. So yes, it has been important. And we are thinking now, and looking at also what the competitors do in link with the pricing, because what Karl said is also what we see in our geographies is that the pricing are all going up. So depending on that, we are right now working on what will come for the next semester. So I may not comment on that. On the stock part, well, cash is the new king now. So, you know, it's also about how do we optimize our stock, which is more about working on the old stock that we have, the stock that are in the stores that are still there for a long time. So it's mostly this, but still we will, of course, it's a new word where stock is key, and this balance between availability and cash control will be even more important. So to do that, we need more, again, to work closely with our suppliers, and also more tools and more competencies internally to manage cash, and not to not offset it by stock availability that we need, of course, for the sales.
Thank you. Karl Trautmann, let me ask you this question. It's from Eugene van Nieuwlander, talking about the, well, Karl, you talked about how you've released some stock that was already within your organization, and how you marshaled that to make it available to consumers. This question asks, is there a need to focus on local and European suppliers to increase availability and also to reduce cost? Karl, your thoughts?
No, I don't think so. First of all, it depends on the industry where you're in. If it is something with food, I can imagine that this is something that could be helpful. But if it is consumer electronics, you have to have sharp eyes to find somebody who is producing product that we are selling in Europe. So there are only a few specialized companies, especially in the IT and in the brown good areas left. White goods could be. I think the most important thing is, like Anne said before, cash is king. Of course, you have to manage your stock levels very careful. Product availability from supplier side is important. If you try to get a big portion of toner in these days, you will not find it available anywhere. And what we need most, instead of promotion or European producers, we need innovations. That is what Anne said in the beginning. We need new innovations in our stores. We need product innovations to alert the consumer, the end consumer, to visit the stores or even the website. So I don't think that in the consumer electronics, especially in the brown goods and in the IT sector, it is useful to concentrate on, let's say, European suppliers. But this answer is related to the consumer electronic where we are active in. I'm not able to vote for or against it for, let's say, food or any clothes or any other things.
Thank you. And Thierry, Gadou, just a final thought from you. We have, I'm afraid, only 30 seconds or so remaining, but in terms of how retailers and suppliers respond to increase share, to defend their margin, technology is their friend.
Well, I think that this it was true before, but it's even, as I said, it was highlighted during this crisis. I mean, the store is a critical asset, for both brands and obviously the retailers. It's their main asset, and it's a shared asset, and it's been the one that's been under pressure for 3 months. So I guess the partnership is an obvious thing to do. There is a lot of services that I think will be at the core of the transformation of TCG retailers, because really I think the complexity of this technology world makes it a great opportunity to become TCG service, an omni-channel service. And I think people need that. People don't need boxes and devices, but solutions and systems that work. And again, I think that that's a natural area for a closer cooperation. Everybody needs those stores, I think, now. So
Okay, thank you very much. We thank all of our panelists. We thank Martin Schulte of Oliver Wyman for his presentation. In the email you'll receive tomorrow, you'll get a link to that. And I thank all of you for your attention, and also those of you who asked us questions during the course of the discussion. Thank you very much for being part of that. The next TCG Summit Leaders Talk will be on Thursday, the 16th of July at 2 p.m. European time. Please hold that date in your calendar. We thank our strategic partners once again for their assistance. They are the Boston Consulting Group, Canon, Electrolux, GFK, Group SEB, Harman, Intel, and SES-imagotag. And a reminder once again that the 7th International TCG Summit will take place. We will all gather together in person on the 25th to the 27th of August in Budapest this year. And just to remind you that if you register as a new delegate for the summit before next Tuesday, until Tuesday, we will reward you with your loyalty with a €200 deduction on the price. The link for registration will be in the email that you will receive from us tomorrow. A reminder, once we end this summit and the Zoom closes down, you will get an invitation to complete our exit poll. Please click on the link and complete the details so that we get your frank and collaborative opinion. So thank you once again for joining us today. We invite you to join our next discussion on the 16th of July from the TCG Summit Leaders Talks. Thank you very much and goodbye.